When you hear the words, tax cut, what comes to mind? Relief, freedom, growth, more money in your pocket, businesses booming, and the economy on fire. At least, that's what politicians love to promise. But is it really that simple? Or are tax cuts just a sugar rush for the economy, followed by a brutal crash? So, is a tax cut really that good? Welcome to A Clash of Minds, where we don't just ask questions, we ask the questions. Let's start with a basic truth. Nobody likes paying taxes. It's like going to the dentist. You know it's necessary, but you'd really rather not. Tax cuts, then, are politically seductive. They are the golden ticket politicians love to offer. Keep more of what you earn, they say. You'll have more money in your pocket. Who wouldn't vote for that? In theory, cutting taxes boosts consumer spending. For the average worker, a tax cut means more cash for groceries, rent, or savings, something everyone loves. A tax cut can also stimulate business investment. Lower corporate taxes can lure companies to set up shop, bringing jobs and innovation. Finally, it fuels economic growth. Lower taxes mean people and businesses keep more money, which they can spend or invest, boosting demand and creating jobs. It's a classic principle of supply-side economics, popularized in the 1980s by the Reagan administration of United States, and later echoed by leaders around the globe. Cue the Laffer curve, the economic theory suggesting there's a sweet spot in tax rates that maximizes government revenue. If taxes are too high, people avoid paying them or stop working as much. Lower the rates, and, so the theory goes, you actually collect more revenue because the economy grows. Sounds like a win-win, right? Well, not so fast. Here's where things get messy. In practice, the results of tax cuts are a lot murkier than the theory promises. Let's look at some real-world case studies. Under President Reagan, tax rates were slashed dramatically. Top marginal tax rates dropped from 70% to 28%. Economic growth followed, but so did ballooning deficits. By the end of his presidency, the U.S. national debt had tripled. President Bush's tax cuts in the early 2000s. They disproportionately benefited the wealthy and did little to stop the oncoming 2008 financial crisis. And what about the 2017 tax cuts under President Trump? The corporate tax rate dropped to 21%. Initially, companies promised job creation and wage hikes. But what actually happened? Stock buybacks soared. Good news for shareholders, not necessarily for workers. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Tax cuts often deepen inequality. Why? Because when you cut taxes, especially on income or capital gains, the rich benefit far more than the poor. After all, the top 1% already hold the majority of wealth. A 5% tax cut means a lot more to someone earning $1 million a year than someone earning $30,000. But it's not just about fairness, it's about impact. When lower-income people get money back, they tend to spend it on food, rent, transportation, essentials. That spending stimulates the economy directly. When wealthy individuals get tax cuts, they're more likely to invest in assets, stocks, property, often offshore. The economic boost, not as direct. And more importantly, we often forget, tax cuts are not free. They reduce government revenue. That means fewer funds for schools, healthcare, infrastructure, defense. Unless, of course, governments go into debt to make up the difference, which many do. This creates what some economists call the starve the beast strategy. The idea is, cut taxes to force a reduction in government size. If the state has less money, it can do less. But is smaller government always better? Consider public goods. Roads don't build themselves. Teachers and doctors don't work for free. Clean water, environmental protection, national security, all of it needs funding. So, when you cut taxes without cutting spending, you dig a financial hole. When you cut spending to match, you often hurt the most vulnerable. When taxes drop but spending doesn't, debt piles up, future generations pay the bill. Now let's talk about growth. Yes, there's evidence that some tax cuts can boost short-term economic activity, but that's not the full story. The tax cuts in the U.S. during 1980s are frequently cited as a catalyst for a significant period of growth. However, correlation does not imply causation. Numerous other factors are always at play: technological innovation, global market dynamics, interest rates, consumer confidence, geopolitical stability. Attributing economic success solely to tax cuts requires a degree of analytical isolation that is rarely, if ever, achievable. Let that sink in. Lower taxes do not necessarily mean faster growth, but they do reliably produce a more unequal society. Why? Because tax policy doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's embedded in a wider social contract. Countries like Sweden and Denmark have higher taxes, but also high living standards, strong safety nets, and robust economies. They're not perfect, but they demonstrate that high taxation doesn't necessarily kill growth. In fact, it can support long-term stability. We also need to recognize that tax cuts are often more political theater than sound policy. They're easy to sell. You earned it, you keep it. They're emotionally appealing. But raising taxes, that's political suicide, even when it's the fiscally responsible thing to do. This creates a paradox. Voters want better schools, hospitals, roads, but they don't want to pay for them. Politicians, afraid of electoral backlash, often choose the short-term popularity of tax cuts over the long-term responsibility of sound budgeting. But someone, someday, has to pay the bill. Let's zoom out. The real question behind tax cuts isn't just economic, it's moral. What kind of society do we want to live in? Do we believe that wealth should be concentrated in the hands of a few, or distributed in ways that promote opportunity for all? Do we see taxation as theft, or as the price we pay for civilization? Oliver Wendell Holmes, a U.S. Supreme Court justice, once said, "Taxes are what we pay for a civilized society." He was right. Taxation is how we pool resources to do together what we cannot do alone. Of course, governments must be held accountable. Waste, inefficiency, and corruption must be rooted out. But the answer isn't to starve the system, it's to fix it. So, is tax cut good or bad? It depends. If it's targeted, temporary, and part of a larger plan to stimulate growth or reduce poverty, maybe. But if it's broad, permanent, and disproportionately favors the wealthy, probably not. We need to stop treating tax cuts as magic bullets. They're tools, useful in the right context, dangerous in the wrong hands. From a broader perspective, tax cuts aren't just a national debate, they're global. Countries compete to attract businesses with lower taxes, but it also sparked accusations of tax avoidance, costing other nations billions. Developing nations face an even tougher choice. Cutting taxes might attract foreign investment, but it risks getting public services in places where they're already scarce. And we need to shift the conversation. Instead of asking, "How can I pay less tax?" maybe we should ask, "What kind of society am I helping to build with my taxes?" Do you prefer small government with fewer services, or higher taxes with robust public programs? And how can we achieve the delicate balance to incentivize ambition without undermining the common good? Tax policy may not be interesting, but it shapes everything: our schools, our health, our roads, our future. So next time a politician promises you a tax cut, ask yourself, at what cost, and who truly benefits? What are your thoughts on this crucial debate? Where do you think the balance lies? Let us know in the comments below. We're eager to hear your perspectives. If you found this discussion thought-provoking and insightful, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more in-depth analyses of the complex issues shaping our world. And don't forget to share this video with anyone you think might find it interesting. Thanks for joining us today. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep the debate alive.